Hello, 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 and welcome to Property Game Changers live on the Property Game Changers Facebook page. Every week, we are in conversation with people who have changed the game in property. We're celebrating the power of ethical property investing to really change lives. We're debunking the myth that you necessarily need a lot of money to get started in property. And as always, we're inspiring each other to believe bigger, to be bolder, and to be game changers for good. And our property game changer this week is the exciting property entrepreneur, Tsen Wharton. Tsen is a full-time property entrepreneur and he thrives on self-development as much as business development. Tsen's focus is 100% on property, from active investing to mentoring and mastermind groups. And with his partner, Chris Dornan, Tsen runs a successful service accommodation business and HMOs and service apartments, and he's doing a lot of good in terms of serving the homeless and lots of other exciting information that we're going to get into today. I think you're really going to enjoy this chat as we welcome Property Game Changer Tsen Wharton. Hi, Tsen.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. We were just talking before about all that you're doing, and actually you've really got a concrete plan of how you'll be serving through your property business, which is one of the things that we love to talk about on Property Game Changers. But before we go into all that, Tsen, tell us a little bit about you, because I know that we might have a 6-year-old join us on the show today.
Well, maybe not. The kids are on half term. We're in Scotland, and so I've got 3 boys, and they're all off school this week, so they might pop in at any point. We'll see.
Yeah, something for us to look forward to.
So what would you like to know?
Yeah, tell us a bit about what kind of person are you, Tsen? I'm going to ask you one of those hard questions. Can you describe yourself in 3 words?
In 3 words? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Ambitious, accountable, and generous.
I love that. Ambition. I am very. Have you always been ambitious, or has it sort of come upon you?
Yeah, maybe not always gregariously and extrovertly, but I think sometimes I'm more of an introvert, but within my own mind and being, yeah, I've always had a hunger for growth more. And so it's a never-ending journey. I've realized that now, that from being younger, it's not just reaching a certain accomplishment and that's it. One of my biggest values is continuous, ongoing growth. And it just keeps me alive and fulfilled, but it will never, ever end.
Yeah. So you must have had to do quite a bit of work if you've gone from being an introvert to now you speak in public quite a lot and you're very public about what you're doing. What has that journey been like?
Wow, where to start? So I don't go over the place. Pinpoint me where you'd like me to start on that journey. You mean the speaking part, or particularly the property part?
Okay. I was asking because I'm also a shy person who now is often in front of the camera and who people think is very not shy. And so I was just interested in that and how it changed, or has it changed your life now that
I can. Thanks for clarifying more. I can speak to that because it's evolved for me, because I have discovered the real love that I actually have for, here's a little insight to how my mind works, and to me, that when I learn something, find something out, discover something that is impactful for whether it be life, health, family, business, particularly in property and in business, I'm literally bursting to share it with someone who cares about it as much as I do and who will go on and use it. And I've realized that often when I've been a prolific note taker all of my adult life. So when I hear speakers or read books or listen to a podcast, I'm taking notes constantly. And I've realized that I've got this big underlying why behind it, because I want to share it with someone else who cares as much as I do, and that they'll get benefit from it, because that is really fulfilling for me. And as the byproduct, I deepen my learning of it. And so it's this self-fulfilling cycle. And so having taken, I guess, focus off of just learning something for me and putting it into more a greater sense of using my learnings and experience to help others that are also interested, because I'm not going to force my opinions and value on to other people who don't necessarily want to know that stuff. But for those who do want to know, then awesome, we're kindred spirits, and I'll share and I'll help move to the next step if it's the right conversation to have. And that really does excite me and light me up. And I think that's what's helped bring me out of that introvert shell to a position where I'm happier to share.
That's really interesting. So it's more that focus on other people, because when you stop focusing on yourself, it doesn't feel as scary when you're focusing on helping and serving people. And I just want to commend you, because actually when you were talking, I did remember that I've seen lots of your posts which do go into detail, and I have a lot of really useful insights. So I encourage you to follow Tsen. What's the best platform for people to follow you on and keep up with your posts and what's going on?
Well, an easy place to do that is the blog page, and I'm posting on 2 of our own platforms, but I can type it into the chat box if need be, because it's a difficult spelling. But you've got one of our domain names, devenirplus.co.uk, and on there is a link to see the web page with the blogs on it. And if you want them direct into your inbox, people can get them into their inbox each week. So I compile a newsletter each week with some resources, some of which I write, others I curate from around the place. And I also post into Facebook groups, most of the property communities in England, Scotland, so a number of different places.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that with us. And I do post in our groups. We've got the Rent to Rent Success Secrets Facebook group for anything rent to rent wise, and HMO Heroes Facebook group for anything that's more broadly HMO wise. So I'd love to see your postings there as well. Let's go back to property, because I'm a little bit off piece there. But tell us about getting started in property, and how did that work out for you?
Yeah, I probably look at it as different, I guess, chapters of starting different journeys. Very, very first journey, everyone's got to start somewhere. It was a simple light bulb moment of reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like many people do, one of the most widely read books with property people, back in 2004. And that got the brain cogs clicking and ticking and thinking, that sounds like it is for me. It just makes total sense. And then it was 2 years later, 2006, I'd started actually investing in property then. And so that began the journey of investing in bricks and mortar for single let purposes. And it was a slow, gradual process. And from there, building up to HMOs and small commercial conversions and that kind of thing. And so that was kind of chapter 1. And I was doing this whilst working full time. And by the time we got to about 2015, that's where I'd felt I'd got to a real plateau based on what I knew. I'd become financially independent. So I'd left the job and was starting a software business, but I was by no means financially abundant, and felt if I was going to continue doing what I was doing, buying 1 or 2 properties a year, it was going to take me forever to get to the kind of, I guess, levels of freedom and choice that I wanted to. And so I went in search of other avenues and strategies and mentors, which started the next chapter, which was Rent to Rent. And that started in 2016.
Yeah, wow. And tell us a little bit about what's happened since 2016. You had all these assets in place. You realized it was going to take a long time to get to perhaps where you wanted to be, financially abundant. And you hit on the rent to rent strategy. So take up the story there.
Yeah. So this takes me into early 2016, finding mentors in Paul and Annika Smith, who were popularizing serviced accommodation at the time. And myself and Chris had just formed a new business partnership, not entirely sure where we're going to go with it. Was it going to be flips? Was it going to be buy, refurbish, refinance? Was it going to be deal packaging? And like many people, we were in a bit of a property sweetie shop, overwhelmed with all different strategies and choices, because I wasn't immersed in all the exciting property strategies that are available. I was pretty much a solid long-term lets, either single let or HMO, with a little bit of commercial conversion in there, but always for the long-term lets. And so whilst I could keep doing the single let stuff, I guess the opportunity of speed with rent to rent really interested us. And so we got educated enough to get started in that space. In fact, I think we even jumped in before we did our first course in that and just got going, because we'd been overwhelmed for about 3 months and frustrated by being busy idiots, and thought, right, now it's time to focus. We're just going to do serviced accommodation and get some results in a few weeks, because we're in a mentorship program. And so we committed to that in the June of 2016. And within that first month of commitment, we went out into Edinburgh, rented our first property. That had its own story of getting the first one. It's quite a numbers game to get there, for the purpose of serviced accommodation. And I guess to compress a long story into short form, we very quickly got ourselves into 4 properties for serviced accommodation in Edinburgh, built on a very sandy foundation of hope and guesswork. And it did great in the summertime, and it did poor in the wintertime. And we felt the pain and the struggle of that. And we shared a bit about this the first time I spoke to you, but that pain and that kind of mess that we experienced in 2016 almost became our message, if you will, going forwards, as to how we then went into the second iteration of our serviced accommodation business, because the first one was so painful for us, taught us a lot of lessons, and we, through those struggles, went in search of solutions on how to do this better. Because essentially, to explain very briefly, if people are wondering, well, why wasn't it working in Edinburgh? It's a brilliant place. Well, we thought it would be a brilliant place, and it is. It's a fantastic city. Typically year-long tourism, but the unit economics of the business model that we're operating with 1-bedroom apartments, our cost base in proportion to the income was not economically viable, and we learned that the hard way. So we earned our stripes. And so in search of how to do things better, I literally had to dig deep, look back on my previous career, look back on previous mentorship I'd had in business and from other entrepreneurs, and actually drew upon a model of starting a business that I learned in 2014 when I was getting into the software space, that I applied to property, which was to go and find your demand first and get some kind of pre-order or commitment in advance, and then build out your solution and deliver it. And so I turned it completely on its head. And in that January, February 2017, literally started a brand new rent-to-rent serviced accommodation business that completely bucked the trend of our previous attempt that was failing. This time it was profitable from day one, because I went and secured a booking with a contractor group who are building a power station in our area for 5.5 months. And I secured that before I even had a property. And so when I got the property and got the furniture in, the guys moved in the next day, and that was us off to the races. And then figuring out how to refine and scale that model, serving that audience, is how we then built the business that still stands today.
Yeah, I remember we did talk about that. And what you've just said, it sounds so obvious, but so few people run their businesses like that. Most people are creating the whole product or service first, and then incurring lots of costs along the way, and then trying to find customers afterwards. So that's a brilliant way. And what I also liked about it is that you decided to keep it at a certain size. You didn't want to scale to too many, or what you felt was too many units at the time because of the level of risk involved. We have a comment from Nathan who's saying, nice, good model.
Tiger hoods. Thank you, Nathan.
And so tell us a little bit about you. You've got this foundation. You're maybe not amazed because that was your plan. It was all going well. So take us on the next steps on from there, because you went into a very specific niche.
Well, from there, our business really was built off the back of serving contractors. So we went from, I think, 1 to maybe 7 or 8 properties in that year one, and then maybe doubled that the next year and took on a full-time member of staff. And as you say, we were very conservative about not exploding lots of properties onto the market, because everyone in rent to rent knows that if you use guesswork and put too many properties out there and people don't come, then you're left holding a cost base that goes out every month. It has to go out every month because you're covering the rent, etc. So it was in a measured fashion. We then grew it gradually, and over time we realized that, and logically one would think as well, we were tapping into construction projects that might be a couple of years, and so we always knew they were going to drop off a cliff at some point. So rather than having, the lots of 3-night stays that tourists will often deliver, and it to be more seasonal, we were getting good several months at a time, and then maybe a different team from that site would take the property, but we'd still have to live through a degree of feast or famine risk and try to mitigate that with business developing. Where's the next piece coming from? What's the next major project, the next site? But we did that successfully for a couple of years. And to further diversify and mitigate risk in the serviced accommodation portfolio, again, I was inspired by hearing from Paul Smith about people starting to serve their councils and the emergency accommodation demand in the local areas. I thought, well, how might we be able to do that? And so I started to explore that as another, I guess, form of different audience that's not seasonal. And it took some time, Stephanie, it did. It wasn't a one-off, one phone call and it happened, but I was diligent about nurturing a relationship and figuring out how can I help solve problems for this particular audience. And so it was a really satisfying journey of literally, I think, Christmas 2018, starting the conversation to see, could we be of assistance over the cold winter months? Nothing bore fruit from that first conversation except the next conversation and the next conversation. The 3 phone calls later, got a face-to-face meeting, led to a second meeting, and we're now up into March 2019, and had met the senior housing manager, understood what their problems are in serving the emergency accommodation demand, particularly for the single adult individuals. That's where the highest demand is, and that'll be the same in most parts of the UK. So not so much families, but single individuals, high demand. And it was quite specific as well about particular section of our local authority area. It wasn't across the entire region, but a certain part of our region. So understanding that and what they need and how that could work got me thinking about how can I tailor what we have to their needs. And so it started with 3 properties on a trial for 1 month, but that's a great booking in anyone's mind for a serviced accommodation, a full month across 3 properties. And then it was a case of seeing how each other works, ironing out little niggles and problems about how to check these type of guest profile in and manage expectations and look after them. And interestingly, Stefan, we found that now being in this for over a year and a half, our emergency accommodation audience are the most grateful of our different sectors. Between the contractors and the tourists, emergency accommodation are the most grateful. Yes, we have problems. We do have issues here and there, but we look to mitigate those as much as possible. But it tends to be a more fulfilling and satisfying audience, particularly for our operations manager now, who's very much the front of the house doing the day-to-day interactions. But together, her and I built up this relationship where we went from those 3 trial properties to then the month gets extended 2 months. They started then booking 3 months at a time. And the individuals, the guests, our clients, I call them, they could change at any point, especially if they were poorly behaved. We'd have to say they're not meeting the house rules, so they move on. So we'd have a number of different people perhaps through the property, but the council is our client. They're like a corporate client. We'll book out up to 3 months at a time, and that stayed the same, so 3 months at a time. And that's given us a huge amount of solidarity throughout. As we got into this year, I cannot tell you how strong a position we've been in thanks to having a local market client base, because when we hit March and tourist bookings got cancelled, because we had a balanced portfolio, contractors, tourism, and some council. Now, if you look at our portfolio, the majority council. That's what saw us through lockdown, and we've served that audience really, really well and got better at doing it as well. And so they've taken up literally most of our portfolio.
That's brilliant, Tsen. Tell us a little bit, because I know it'll be different in every local authority area, but I'm just curious. You said it's mainly single people who the council's needing help in housing on this emergency basis. And what kind of housing are they looking for? Is it shared housing? Is it individual housing? What works in your area?
Well, if you imagine, we'd gone from expensive rent, single 1-bedroom properties in city centre of Edinburgh. So capital city, prime, it's not a million miles away from, London type proportions. Very high cost base, but very appealing for the tourists stopping by for 1, 2, or 3 nights. Having understood that that's not the prime market for us to serve, we then went suburban, if you will, semi-rural and secondary towns to serve our contractors. And so we went into bigger properties, typically 2 and 3 bedroom houses and large flats, ideally with their own front entrance. So that's what we focused on, and driveways, because we're serving the contractors. And we got a couple of bigger ones. We've got a guest house of 5 bedrooms, and we've got a 4-bedroom cottage, but they're typically the majority 2 and 3 bedrooms. So when it came to serving the council, in Scotland, we've got much more stringent HMO regulations than in England. So the minute you get into 3 people unrelated sharing a property, you need an HMO license. And so unless our properties were HMO licensed, even though it's serviced accommodation and it was temporary because they are homeless, our council would deem the property that they put them in as their main residence. So they would want HMO property for their temporary guests. And so some of ours, fewer were HMO, majority weren't. So we'd then have to lock 1 bedroom off and do 2 bedrooms. So we'd be underutilizing a bedroom, but the 100% occupancy across a month and 1 clean a week made it perfectly viable. So all of our 3 bedrooms were down to then using 2, and all the 2-bedroom properties were fine because it was 2 individuals. We put locks on the doors, and some of the properties would have ensuite bathrooms. Some would just be shared facilities of 1 bathroom, 1 lounge, 1 kitchen, and that's totally fine. And I think it was a bit of an experiment for the council as well, because they're managing different personalities and different needs. There's some quite vulnerable people as well. So sharing can have its challenges. And this is where our role has kind of started to bridge into a bit of social work, which unintended consequence, but I believe we're doing good things to help people in the area. But to answer your question, the accommodation is, as you'd expect from a sometimes ex-local authority properties or semi-rural or secondary town. It could be semi-detached, could be an upper villa, could be a 2-bed, 3-bed flat. Nothing flash fancy, because our market was never high-end boutique. When we were serving contractors, it was plain simple, decent space. Interior, we would always have clean lines, simple, but brand new furniture. So it looks decent, but it's not high-end boutique, which is where the challenge would always come with holidaymakers, because their expectations would be very, very high. So we know the market we serve, and we do that very well.
Yeah, well, that's phenomenal. Nathan's saying probably HMO, he would have thought, but actually it is a mixture of HMOs. So Nathan's right, but also you're using your 3 beds and occupying them as 2 beds. And we've had a hello from Joan. Nice to see you. They must get you on here sometime, Joan. So let's continue on, because we've got some good stuff to get into. I was very excited when I heard the book that you've recently written. Now, Tsen, is this your first book?
It is, yeah.
Yes. So tell us about your book.
I don't know if you can see it, but I've got one right here. This is it, Predictable Property Profits. This captures the journey that I was explaining in short form a few minutes ago, that mess that we were in, getting kind of knee deep in rent-to-rent properties built on guesswork, and realizing the hard way the pains that brings into a business. That mess is what has become this message in the book, because I had to go through a lot of ups and downs and searching to find solutions, because we wanted to be around for the long term. We wanted to make serviced accommodation rent-to-rent work for us, and so I had to find a better way to do it. And I would say it was going back to some teachings from an online software entrepreneur that I drew upon those lessons from 2013-14 and thought, how could I apply that into property? And that's what I write about in the Predictable Property Profits. It's called 4 Simple Steps to Remove Guesswork and Get More Certainty in Your Property Deals. And the story, which is all completely factual, is how step by step we transitioned out of the failing SA business and started again in a new location, and were profitable from day one using the 4 steps that I've outlined in the book. And then I go on to explain that the same principle I'm sharing is completely and utterly applicable to every property strategy, and it will be more applicable to some than others. But as I've been coaching and mentoring more and more in this space, and because I live and breathe this stuff, it's our own investment philosophy. I'm helping others in their parts of the world and with their different strategies, and I'm seeing students getting great results in rent-to-rent HMO, in, for example, rent-to-buy, so single lets, but in rent-to-buy space, in the commercial property investing. So it just makes complete and utter sense to me. It's just that the first real practical case study that brought it to life for me was the rent-to-rent for SA. But in 4 steps I apply to all property strategies as much as possible, and really all business endeavors too.
Yeah, it's a great book, and I do encourage people to go ahead and buy that. But do you just want to give us a high level, Tsen, of the 4 steps?
I can indeed. So you'll see on the front of the book here, there are dice. And people think, well, what are you talking about, Tsen? Why would you have dice? Because that would give you a sense of gambling. Well, I guess it's a bit of a counterintuitive image, because I'm talking about being predictable, but I've got dice there. The reason why I've got dice is because when I wanted to make a simple to remember 4-step process, the lettering lent itself to being dice. So the first step is D, find the demand logically. So we've done this several times in our own business. We found the contractor demand and built out for them. Then we found the emergency accommodation demand, and we've scaled more because of that. But it all starts with the demand. The second one, I, is identify the solution. So what is the property solution required to either solve the pain point of the demand or satisfy the big desire that they want? And that, as I say, that could be, in our case with contractors, accommodation that is at a certain price band within 30 minutes drive of the construction site, that has XYZ facilities, it's got parking space, and it's not bang on the high street, because the guys might then be tempted to go out drinking and partying, what have you, and not show up to work on time. So that's identifying what is the solution for that particular demand source. Then the C is, once I understand the demand and what they want, now I need to get commitment. So that's the C. It's get commitment in advance before I put money down. So that's pre-selling. It's a beautiful thing, pre-selling. So if everyone can kind of get that in their mind of how can they get commitment in advance, as much as possible, you want it to be a transaction, like someone paying a deposit or paying for the booking in advance. But what's second best? Is it a written agreement? Is it an email confirmation, with the lightest form just being a verbal yes? But as much as possible, you want commitment in advance. That's the key ingredient for all this. And the final part, E, of the dice is execute. In other words, deliver the solution as you've mapped out to satisfy, solve the problem. And in executing that solution, then take the time to understand the nuances to refine it the next time so you can get better at it and scale. Quite simple. That's the 4 simple steps.
I love it. It's such an elegant model. So accommodations for that. Actually, you have another book that you've just put out that I'm very interested in. I have a virtual assistant. I know a lot of property people either have one or want one, and there's a lot of mystery to it. How do you get a good one, etc. And your other book that you've just published is all about that. So talk to us about that, Tsen. So
I have been working with virtual assistants since 2014, when I'd first enlisted the help of virtual assistants with building a software business that I've now pivoted out of because I realized it wasn't in alignment with what I wanted. But I learned how to hire virtual assistants back then. And I used to be a recruitment professional. I used to be a headhunter as well. So I've got my own actual corporate experience of building recruitment processes and managing selection and interviewing and so on and so forth. So I kind of put those two experiences together, and I have written a specific guide about multiplying your productivity by hiring a virtual assistant. And it's about a 40-50 page guide which outlines what to outsource, how to actually find and recruit a virtual assistant, and then how to actually manage them once you have them. And so I'd written that, and the aim with that, because I haven't overly publicized it, Stephanie, but the aim with that was to put onto our website, the Gamechanger Plus, to again be of service to others, because I do get asked about it quite a lot, and it's not something that I can just explain in 5 minutes. There's a formula and a process, and it takes some time doing. I mean, that thing took me well over 3 weeks to actually write out and document and capture screenshots. But I thought I would put that on our website for people to purchase for an amount. And I came up with, I think maybe I'll put it on for £30. And then I thought, well, and I do personally give to cancer charities. And I thought part of our business is going that way. I can maybe talk about it later. So how about I'd say we'll make half of that go directly to the cancer charity. So I'm collecting the donations really on behalf, but whoever's donating gets the benefit of the manual. So it's literally been a thought in the last few weeks. I've thought, stick it on the website, because I've been sat on it and I haven't got it out there. So I'm going to put it on the website and make it available so people can do that if they're interested.
It's much needed, because people do need to multiply their productivity. People do need to actually, record the processes so that they can outsource, and that's the way to scale up. But let's move now on to part of this Property Gamechangers came about because people can change the game in their own life, their families' life, their communities, but also in our world. As you become more adept at wealth creation, you get the joy of giving and of doing things way beyond yourself. And I was asking you, and I said to you earlier, that's one of the best answers that I've had so far during all of these Property Gamechangers interviews that I've been doing. So tell us a bit about how you're changing the game for other people through your business.
So the vision for part of our, I guess we touched on it earlier when you were asking about going from being introvert to then sharing and being more public, I found this love for helping people through the platform of masterminds, so small, intimate mentoring groups, which I had been part of since 2014, and then had started actually hosting and running and mentoring others since about 2.5 years ago, and love doing that. And so part of what Chris and I, because Chris is also mentoring through masterminds as well, part of our vision that ties our experience, his in building nice buildings, both of ours in mentoring, his particular love for nicely designed properties, and our serviced accommodation knowledge, was to, in the future, create wonderful buildings, venues, if you will, that we would hire out ourselves to take dedicated groups of people who really want to go to the next level, that we can help teach over a period of whatever it might be, 4 or 5 days, and have some great fun doing it as well. We want to be in nice locations.
Yeah.
The rest of the year, though, we'd only be doing that a couple of times a year, say, but we'd have the rest of the year available for holidays. And a specific part of that holiday calendar that we wanted to be able to be in a position to donate, if you will, would be holiday time to families who have been experiencing, I guess, the pain of having someone in the family with cancer, and giving them the opportunity to go away and create some really wonderful, rich memories as a family in this place that we've created. And we donate that time to that cause. And the reason why that is so close to us, and I know a lot of people have been touched by cancer in some way, is because people very close to us have been affected by it. From one of my best friends that was lost just before her 30th birthday, incredibly sad, way too young, to more recently my father, who has had successful treatment for it. So we've been blessed to have many wonderful holidays with him, and many more to come, I'm sure. But because those family experiences are things I've grown up with and love creating for my 3 boys I mentioned before, it's one of those things that experiences you just can't beat. That's where, if I was to look at my credit card statement, our biggest outgoings are experiences. It's not stuff, it's experiences with loved ones. And so that's why it kind of ties a lot together for Chris and I, as to, well, if there's one way that we could give back, it would be through the things that are meaningful to us, and providing a special place where people could create amazing memories. So that's a vision, and it's not here right now. It's something that we are connected to very strongly, and we'll be working towards, I'm sure, and working with that for the rest of our lives. I think I stated in this book that in the 10 years from now, I want to be able to look back and know about the stories and experience we've been able to help create. So that might take some time to put in place, but it gives us a big cause to move forwards with. And that's why in the short term, I thought, why not use the virtual assistant manual as the first step to making those small contributions to the causes that mean something to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is amazing, Tsen. I love the way that the actual business that you do is helping homeless people, and you do it with such caring and such diligence, and also that you have this bigger vision for your retreats and for lifelong learning. That was one of the values that you talked about earlier, and the way that you would be using them, but also to enable them to be used for people who are families with the effect of cancer, to create those memories together. And those might be especially poignant to have them, you know, before, if it's a fatal form of cancer. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's beautiful vision, and thank you for sharing it with us. Ernest says he's really enjoying these nuggets that you're giving us. And Nathan's saying that's a fantastic way to give back.
Thank you, guys.
So, Sen, we're coming towards the end of our time together today.
Wow, it's flown by, hasn't it?
It has. It really, really has. And so you told us about, how, being a game changer in property. And I wonder if there's any advice that you would give to people who are listening and who are thinking that they might want to get started.
Okay. The biggest advice would be to figure out what is it you want and why. The why is one of the biggest parts of it, really, because I can tell you now, it's not about money. Money helps a lot. It certainly gives more freedom of choice and can solve a lot of problems. So it's a big part of it, but it's not everything. And so figuring out why you would want to achieve X, Y, Z or have X, Y, Z as it relates to property by way of assets, income, rent business. Getting really connected to the why is the first big important part, because you're going to need to be inspired by something from within rather than purely drawn towards a monetary figure. And so the sooner that you can get connected to why you want this, what is your purpose, why are you going to keep on going through the rejections, the knockbacks from landlords who aren't willing to do a rent deal with you? Why are you going to continue getting up and pushing something a smidge forward to not see the results in the first week? It's because you're connected to that bigger vision, and you'll stay committed to it, and you'll take probably more pleasure in the journey than in actually just arriving at it. And that's what's really crucial to get connected to. And the other part is, when you're clear on it, then don't think about getting into property. If you feel property is the right vehicle for you, then just make a start. Figure out what your first step's going to be. Is it reading something? Is it speaking to Stephanie? Is it speaking to another one of your colleagues or peers, or attending a course? But figure out what's the first step and take it. And then the next step, and then the next step. And the whole thing just builds on it until you get to a point where you've got some momentum. So that would be my two-part reply to it. The why, and don't think, but take action and get started.
Love it. Thank you so much. And just while you were speaking there, Joan said this is fantastic, and that she was gifted a respite break 7 when she was recovering from leukemia, and you get the impression that really meant a lot to her. So thanks again for sharing your vision and for sharing your story and your life with us today and your insights. It's been amazing to speak to you again. Thanks for sharing so much. As we just depart, if you want to say any final words before we sign off for today, Sen.
No, just thank you for having me on your podcast. You're doing a phenomenal thing here, and changing the game by helping influence many others. So kudos to you for taking that action and making things happen, and long may it continue. I hope you continue to impact many to either get started or go to the next level or whatever it may be. And if anything that I've said today has helped inspire someone, then yeah, we'd love to hear how. If it has helped, then fantastic. This is doing what it's supposed to. But thanks for everyone's time and for listening.
Thanks so much, Sen. And of course, if you do want to find out more about Sen, or you do want to buy either his book, the 2 books, there's the Predictable Property Profits, and also he's got his book about hiring a VA, multiplying your productivity. And you can get at devonairplus.co.uk, devoneirplus.co.uk. But for now, it's goodbye from Sen, and also goodbye from me. I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.